been sitting there, if you are a regular here at Temple Israel, in this room, in our Corman Hall, you've probably been sitting here through our entire service asking yourself, why are the flags here instead of in the sanctuary where they usually stand? It is because they are a prop of my sermon. And in order to keep you engaged and involved, I'm actually going to ask everybody to rise in your seats. This way you'll stay awake through the sermon. And if you are comfortable and able to rise, I invite you also to put your hand over your heart and please join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. I have your attention now. I have, as many of you have, literally spoken those words thousands of times during my lifetime. How many of you in elementary school stood every single morning and recited those words, right? Anybody recite them before the words "with God" were added? A few of you, interesting. I did not. I also, as a Boy Scout, every meeting and conclave started with reciting those words, and our hands were over our hearts, committing ourselves to the flag and the country. And as an adult, I still from time to time recite those words at government programs and community gatherings and other public settings. You see, the pledge, as it is often referred to, is patriotism in iconic words which have withstood the test of time. And although there has been some controversy over the years, specifically over the addition of the words "under God," those words and the flag that it references are an important symbol of our nation, even in a time when sometimes the flag itself is a controversial symbol. But here at Temple Israel, we always have the flag of the United States and the flag of the State of Israel on our bima for every single service. I have just purchased a flag to put on my new home, which for the first time in my lifetime has a flagpole holder. I didn't know what it was at first, and then I figured it out, and I bought one at Costco. They're on sale if you're interested right now. They stand to highlight our dedication to the United States and to the 5,000-year-old connection to the land of Israel. Now, earlier this week, I had the opportunity and the pleasure of attending my own son's high school honors convocation at Bloomfield Hills High School. It was a proud moment as parents and grandparents watched bright minds full of potential being recognized for their hard work. And as part of the ceremony, everybody stood and recited together the Pledge of Allegiance, led by the student body president. Hearing those words, familiar once again, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, I was struck by the depth of their meaning, especially this particular week in the context of two important commemorations: Yom HaZikaron last weekend and Memorial Day here in the United States coming up in just 2 weeks. Yom HaZikaron, as you all know, is Israel's Memorial Day, a solemn day when Israelis honor and remember those who have sacrificed their lives in defense of the state of Israel. It is a day that binds Jews around the world together in a collective moment of grief and remembrance. In Israel, the sirens sound for 2 full minutes across the country. Everything comes to a halt. Highways stop in their place, buses stop, and people stand wherever they are for 2 full minutes of silence. And it serves as a powerful reminder of the price that is sometimes paid for the safety and security of the Jewish nation. Here in Michigan at Temple Israel, more than 500 people gathered in our sanctuary to commemorate the holiday in the United States of America. Now, similarly, in just 2 weeks, we will also observe Memorial Day here in the United States, also honoring men and women who have died in military service to our country. And although our celebration is marked more with backyard barbecues and parades than solemn ceremonies, our Memorial Day is one of reflection on the freedoms that we enjoy and the ultimate sacrifices that others made to protect our freedoms. So when I spoke the words of the Pledge of Allegiance this week, I was reminded of the core values that underpin both American and Israeli societies: liberty, justice, and freedom. These values are not just abstract ideals, they are principles that people have lived and are now dying for. Principles that demand our ongoing commitment and reflection. And while the tragedies of war continue to rage on, my prayer is that those military actions might actually bring us closer to the democratic values represented by our flag. But the challenge for both the Israeli community and our community after observing these memorials is what comes next. You see, in Israel, Yom HaZikaron is followed immediately by Yom Ha'Atzmaut. That independence festival refocuses the nation on moving forward. In the wake of great tragedy, the potential for life and light is even greater. Here in America, there are 2 months between Memorial Day and the 4th of July, so it mutes that link a little bit. But I actually think there's something to be learned from our brothers and sisters in Israel, who immediately after a day of memory celebrate freedom and democracy. And the Pledge of Allegiance actually leads me to understand exactly the purpose of that celebration. You see, the pledge is actually an actionable statement of what we need to do. It is a commitment to do what it takes in our lives to live up to the values of our country. You pledge yourself to that flag. You actively swear that you will uphold those democratic values. And so it means that we have an obligation to act deliberately to uphold liberty and justice. And I think that one of the most profound ways that we can do that is by actively participating in the democracy and the rights symbolized by the flag. And I think the right to vote is actually a cornerstone of the liberties that so many have fought to protect. To honor those democratic values in a tangible way, I am asking every one of us to engage this year, an election year, in the electoral process. If you haven't already done so and you are of age, register to vote. Encourage other people to do the same. Volunteer to help with voter registration drives or to assist at the polling places. Work every single day to ensure that our democratic processes are upheld, that every voice is heard, and that our community remains committed to the principles of liberty, justice, and unity for all. It is both a right and a responsibility to elect leaders who courageously uphold the values of our country. And regardless of who it is you support, regardless of which side of the aisle you sit on, we are a better nation if we take seriously that obligation. You see, by participating in that democratic process, we're not only honoring the sacrifice of those who have served, but we are also ensuring their legacy of freedom and justice continues. And it reminds me of a story I just read this particular week in a book by Dan Sinor, the author of a book about Israel, actually 2 books about Israel. He tells the story of protesters in Israel from the pro-government camp and the anti-government camp who are coming home after 2 concurrent protests, one in Tel Aviv and one in Jerusalem. The image that he mentions takes place in the Jerusalem train station, where one group of protesters is going down the escalator and the other group is coming up the other side on the other escalator. Both sides are carrying flags. And they reach out over the handrails, they shake each other's hands, and they tell each other they love them. This is something that's missing from our community. Recognizing that we can argue, We can debate, and ultimately we are all part of that process of building together a stronger, more democratic community. So on this Shabbat, between Yom HaZikaron and Memorial Day, we reflect on the sacrifices of individuals who are remembered on those holidays. And each of those holidays pushes us to recognize the importance of every person and their role in our community. It reminds us that freedoms and values are upheld by our own sacrifice. Those who died, that was a selfless sacrifice. But those of us who remain, we can sacrifice by our actions, by our commitments. So I pray that these actions tonight reflect the same of those who we remember. Let us honor those who have sacrificed and embrace our obligation to work together to build a world of liberty and justice of all, because we all have a voice that is powerful, and our voice can change the world.